Matthew Evans, a wealthy individual in his late 70s, was alone in his silver Mercedes, tapping his thumb impatiently against the steering column. The Kentucky heat was scarcely tempered by the air conditioner's hum. Matthew was accustomed to conditions being in his favor, as he was retired and affluent as a result of his business career in finance. However, that day, he was isolated with a flat tire, far from the luxury of his immaculate mansion on the outskirts of town. He exhaled and accepted the fact that he would have to wait after several unsuccessful attempts to contact roadside assistance. He observed a figure walking toward him down the road just as a sliver of frustration began to emerge. A young lad, possibly 13 or 14, approached with a resolute demeanor, donning a faded t-shirt and worn-out sneakers. Matthew watched as the boy's eyes narrowed as he examined the automobile. The boy then gave Matthew a polite but confident nod. The lad inquired, "Have you acquired a flat tire, sir?" His voice was composed. Yes. Matthew replied, experiencing a peculiar combination of relief and disquiet. "I was hoping for some assistance, but my phone is not receiving a signal out here." The youngster smiled briefly. "I am able to assist you with that," he stated, kneeling beside the tire without hesitation. "Last summer, my grandfather instructed me on how to change a tire. Have you got an extra?" Matthew pointed to the trunk and observed the lad as he opened it and extracted the requisite tools. The young boy worked quickly, his hands moving with a calm confidence that appeared to be almost beyond his years. For the first time in a long time, Matthew experienced an unusual sense of contrition as he stood there. He desired to provide the youngster with something in exchange, but the young man was preoccupied with the task at hand and scarcely glanced up. The child completed the task after a brief period. Then, Matthew stepped back and wiped his palms on his jeans, saying, "All done." He smiled in a modest, contented manner. Matthew presented the child with a few bills that he had extracted from his wallet. "Please accept this. Your assistance is greatly appreciated." However, the boy took a step back and respectfully raised his hand. "I am grateful, sir. However, I do not require any assistance. I am delighted to be of assistance." Matthew stood there, money still in his hand, as he watched the youngster turn and walk away down the road. Stunned, the interaction had left him feeling somewhat moved, although he was unable to pinpoint the exact reason. Now that he was alone, he returned the money to his wallet and returned to his vehicle. He observed the boy's diminution in the distance from the rearview mirror. Matthew's mind was preoccupied with the youth for the remainder of his journey. He exuded a calm dignity, a self-assurance that was not derived from wealth or privilege, but rather from a more profound source. Matthew was unable to escape the image of the boy walking away with nothing but a smile as he sat alone in his luxurious home that evening. Matt sat in the leather armchair of his study that evening, surrounded by shelves of literature that he seldom perused. The room was devoid of any noise, with the exception of the gentle chiming of the grandfather clock in the corner. His dinner, which consisted of asparagus and a flawlessly prepared steak, remained unfinished on the side table. He was unable to suppress his thoughts regarding the youngster. Matthew had encountered thousands of individuals throughout his lifespan, including business partners, employees, and investors. Negotiations, favors, and transactions comprised the majority of interactions. An exchange, a price, or an expectation were consistently present. However, this child, this stranger, had assisted him out of pure kindness. He reclined and sipped his scotch. The boy's self-assurant smile was relived in his consciousness. Matthew believed that he did not appear to possess a significant amount of wealth. The dust on his hands, the faded clothing, and the worn shoes, all of these elements conveyed a narrative. Nevertheless, the child exhibited a level of integrity that is exceedingly uncommon in the present day. Matthew was unable to suppress the impulse to locate the lad the following morning. He was unaware of the reason, but a sense of incompleteness pervaded him. Perhaps the motivation was remorse, gratitude, or simply curiosity. For whatever reason, he found himself driving down the same stretch of road, his eyes trained on the horizon in search of the youngster. He spent hours at service stations and small diners, inquiring with anyone who would listen if they had seen a young boy who matched the description. The majority of individuals either sighed or shook their heads until, at last, an elderly woman behind the counter of a diminutive cafe spoke up. "Sounds like you're talking about Elijah," she stated, drying her hands on her apron. "That young man is consistently providing assistance to those in the vicinity. He resides in Harland with his mother." Harland. Matthew repeated the action, composing a mental note. "I am grateful." Harland, situated in the foothills of the Appalachians, was an hour's drive distant. Matthew scarcely observed the picturesque ride. His thoughts were racing with inquiries. What was the nature of this boy's life? What type of family would have nurtured an individual in that manner? Upon his arrival in Harland, the streets were tranquil, dotted with modest residences and small businesses. Eventually, he was directed to a modest house on the outskirts of town after asking a few locals about Elijah. The front veranda of the house was slightly sagging under its own weight, and it was characterized by a worn but tidy appearance. Matthew hesitated for a moment before parking his vehicle, uncertain about what he would say. Knocking on the door, he exhaled deeply. A moment later, it opened, revealing a woman in her early 40s. Her eyes were sharp and inquisitive as she assessed him, and she appeared tired yet kind. She inquired, "Is it possible for me to assist you?" "Good morning," Matthew greeted, cleaning his throat. "I apologize for the inconvenience. However, I am under the impression that I encountered your son yesterday." "Elijah, correct. He assisted me in repairing a punctured tire." Her countenance immediately relaxed. "That sounds like my Elijah," she said with a slight smile. "He's always helping folks," Matthew stated. "I simply wished to express my gratitude in a manner that was appropriate. He wouldn't accept anything from me yesterday." With an affirmation, she stepped aside to allow him to go in. "He is located in the rear. You are encouraged to remain in the waiting area." Matthew entered the space, observing the understated ambience. The walls were adorned with family photographs and a few hand-drawn pictures that appeared to have been created by a much younger Elijah, while the furniture was clean despite its age. It was a stark contrast to his own residence, which boasted immaculate surfaces and costly artwork. Nevertheless, there was a sense of warmth and vitality emanating from this location. He went out with her to the backyard, where Elijah was repairing the fence. The boy was taken aback by Matthew's appearance and glanced up. "Hello, sir," Elijah said, wiping his palms on his jeans. "What are you doing here?" Matthew smiled, but he was experiencing an unusual amount of anxiety. "I would like to express my gratitude once more. I was unable to cease thinking about the assistance you provided when I was in dire need." Elijah's expression was effortless and sincere as he shrugged. It wasn't a big deal. However, Matthew believed it to be the case. He was resolute in his determination to demonstrate it. Elijah's curious gaze was fixated on Matthew as he leaned against the fence. Neither of them spoke for a brief period. The boy's composed demeanor caused Matthew to experience a minor sense of dislocation, as if he were the one being evaluated. Matthew eventually broke the silence by saying, "I don't believe you comprehend the significance of the situation. People don't usually help strangers without expecting something in return." Elijah's head inclined slightly, as if perplexed by the statement. "I do not perceive it in that manner," he responded. "If someone needs help and I can do it, why wouldn't I?" The boy's logic was so simple that Matthew was astounded. He gazed beyond Elijah to the yard. The vegetation was sparse and uneven, and the fence was patched together with mismatched wood. The old swing set, which was rusted and broken, was perched precariously behind the home. It was evident that Elijah's family was not wealthy. However, they managed to survive with their meager resources. Matthew expressed sincerity when he stated, You possess a sound mind. Your mother must be proud." Elijah smiled and turned his gaze back toward the residence. "She exerts herself diligently. I simply endeavor to provide assistance whenever possible." Matthew remained silent for a brief period as he contemplated the boy's remarks. He recalled his own upbringing, which was spent in a residence that was similar to this one. The value of hard labor and perseverance was instilled in him by his parents' tireless efforts to make ends meet. He had strayed from those lessons over the years, ensnared in the pursuit of fortune and status. He now experienced an unusual combination of nostalgia and regret as he stood in this yard. Matthew finally expressed his desire to assist you and your family. Elijah's demeanor was reserved as he stood up. "We are in good health, sir. We do not require anything." Matthew maintained, "It is not a matter of necessity. It pertains to what is morally correct. I am grateful for your assistance, and I would like to reciprocate." Elijah's mother exited the porch before he could respond, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Elijah, you better come inside and wash up before lunch," she communicated. Afterward, her gaze shifted to Matthew. "Would you be interested in joining us? It is not elaborate, but you are most welcome." Matthew hesitated, as he was unfamiliar with such an invitation. However, the sincerity of her voice rendered him incapable of offering any rationalizations. He followed her into the residence and said, "I would like that." The kitchen was filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread and roasted vegetables. Although the table was diminutive and surrounded by chairs that were not in harmony, it was arranged with meticulous attention to detail. Matthew sat down, feeling peculiarly out of place in his tailored suit amidst the modest ambience. The effortless smile of Elijah never faltered as he joined them after washing his hands at the sink. Matthew was captivated by their conversation as they dined. Elijah discussed his educational institution, his acquaintances, and his aspirations to become an engineer. His mother recounted anecdotes about the community, expressing a modest sense of pride in the individuals who were responsible for one another. Matthew listened attentively, evoking a sense of affection that had not been felt in years. Despite his affluence and success, his own home appeared cold and desolate in comparison to this modest residence, which was replete with genuine connection and laughter. Matthew turned to Elijah's mother as they cleared the table after lunch. "You've done a remarkable job raising him," he asserted. "He's got more heart than most people I know." She smiled, her eyes gleaming with appreciation. "I am grateful. Although he is a good child, we have encountered our fair share of difficulties. We have acquired the ability to appreciate little things." Matthew nodded, his mind already mulling over concepts. He was reluctant to exceed his bounds, but he was unable to abandon them without at least doing something for them. He had received a gift from this family that he had not even realized he needed, a reminder of what was truly important. Matthew departed their residence that afternoon with a sense of clarity that had not been felt in years. He commenced his planning as he returned to his estate. This was not a matter of charity. It was a tribute to the family's fortitude and the boy's selflessness. More than worn furniture and patched fences were due to Elijah and his mother. They were entitled to stability and acknowledgement for the resilience they demonstrated on a daily basis. Matthew conducted numerous telephone contacts the following morning. He contacted former colleagues, contractors, and suppliers. A plan was implemented by midday. Trucks and laborers began to arrive at Elijah's residence within a week. Matthew, with a clipboard in hand, directed the restorations from the sidewalk, as Elijah and his mother observed in astonishment. "You were not obligated to do this," Elijah's mother stated, her voice quivering. Matthew's expression was earnest as he turned to her as she observed the personnel unload supplies. She stated, "We have successfully navigated independently. You have achieved more than mere management. You have flourished. However, you provided me with an item that I was unaware I was lacking. Allow me to reciprocate." Elijah was more reserved than usual, standing beside his mother with a contemplative expression. Meeting his eye, Matthew knelt slightly. "Elijah, You have imparted knowledge to me. Showing up is more important than money when it comes to assisting others. I am eager to be there for you." The residence underwent a transformation over the course of the next few weeks. The roof was repaired. The sagging veranda was replaced with sturdy wood, and the rusty swing set in the backyard was replaced with a new one. Interiorly, the walls were painted, the floors were polished, and the kitchen was modernized with efficient appliances. Elijah initially endeavored to assist with the renovations. Matthew persisted on taking a break, despite the fact that he was sweeping debris and carrying planks. Matthew smiled and stated, "Your responsibility is to temporarily relinquish your childhood." Nevertheless, Elijah was unable to resist the urge to observe the crew at work. His eyes were alight with fascination as he watched them measure, cut, and build. A burly man named Joe, one of the workers, observed his interest and extended an invitation to assist in the measurement of timber planks. Elijah's enthusiasm for construction and tools was contagious, and he soon began to pose questions. Matthew observed from a distance, his chest expanding with a sense of warm pride. He experienced a sense of purpose that transcended his own limitations for the first time in years. The boy's vitality reminded him of the ambition he once had before life became a blur of boardrooms and stock portfolios. The endeavor was on the brink of completion one evening as the sun began to set. The family stood on the veranda, in awe of the transformation, when Elijah's mother turned to Matthew. Her voice was strangled with emotion. "This is no longer merely a residence. It serves as a residence. I am uncertain as to how we can ever express our gratitude." Matthew's tone was gentle as he shook his head. "You have already done so. You served as a reminder of the fundamental components of life: family, connection, and purpose. I believe that I should be the one to express my gratitude." The conclusion of the renovation project was reminiscent of a celebration. Neighbors visited to observe the modifications, providing smiles and small gifts, including freshly baked bread, jars of homemade marmalade, and a potted plant. Elijah's laughter reverberated throughout the yard as he sprinted about, demonstrating the newly painted rooms and the new swing set to his peers. The home, which had previously appeared tired and worn, now emanated a sense of vitality. Matthew observed the scene from the front veranda, leaning against the new, durable railing. He had not experienced this level of happiness in many years. A straightforward, unadulterated sense of happiness that resulted from witnessing others flourish. Elijah's mother approached with a cup of cold tea in her hand. She extended it to him with a smile. She said softly, "You have accomplished more than simply repairing a house. You have inspired us with optimism. Additionally, I believe you have discovered something that is uniquely yours." Matthew nodded and sipped from his beverage. "I have," he acknowledged. "I devoted an inordinate amount of time to the pursuit of things that I believed were significant: status, money, and influence. Nevertheless, none of it evokes this sensation. I have never been so moved as I have been by any of it." Elijah joined them on the veranda as the sun began to set, his energy remaining limitless. His expression was contemplative as he gazed at Matthew. "Mr. Matthew," he continued, "I have been reflecting on the kindness you extended to us. I aspire to engage in an activity similar to that at some point. I am also interested in assisting others." Matthew maintained his voice as he placed his hand on Elijah's shoulder. "Elijah, you are already that. All of this was initiated by your generosity. Do not ever relinquish that." The sky transitioned from gold to a deep orange as the three of them sat together. The warmth of the day persisted, but it was accompanied by a more profound warmth that was derived from a shared sense of purpose, gratitude, and connection. Elijah and his mother escorted Matthew to his vehicle when it was time for him to depart. Matthew's memory was permanently imprinted by the boy's wide grin and his mother's weeping smile as he drove away. He came to the realization that this was not the conclusion. This was merely the commencement of a new chapter. The weeks that followed brought about additional alterations in their lives. Elijah's newfound fascination regarding construction evolved into a fervor. Matthew arranged for him to observe the laborers who had assisted in the renovation of the house. Elijah was enthusiastic about acquiring knowledge and absorbed every ounce of information. Matthew, in turn, was repeatedly drawn to Harland. Each visit was more akin to a return home than a journey. He no longer perceived himself as an interloper in their lives. Rather, he was now a part of a more significant entity. In addition, for the first time in years, he was content. The narrative concluded in the same small town with a large heart, where a young boy's act of compassion served as a reminder to an elderly man of the most profound lesson of life. It is not about one's possessions, but rather about giving.